Donald Trump rejects a young immigrant for not being fit for American business. Years later, Trump's company depends on the very man he dismissed. How did this shocking reversal happen? Watch to uncover the full story and tell us where you're watching from. It all started on a crisp spring morning in Manhattan, New York. The hustle of the city was alive as people hurried to work, coffee in hand and ambition in their eyes. Among them was a young man named Alejandro Ramirez, a 22-year-old immigrant fresh out of college. Alejandro wasn't just another face in the crowd. He carried a dream. He had moved to the U.S. 5 years ago, determined to build a better future for himself and his family. His parents worked long hours cleaning offices, and Alejandro wanted to make their sacrifices worth it. Dressed in his best suit, Alejandro walked confidently into the sleek glass building of Trump Enterprises. He had spent weeks preparing for this moment, going over interview questions and fine-tuning his resume. To him, this wasn't just any job. It was his chance to prove that hard work and determination could open doors for anyone. Inside the towering office, everything seemed larger than life. Shiny marble floors, walls adorned with photos of Donald Trump shaking hands with powerful figures, and the faint hum of a bustling workplace. Alejandro sat in the waiting area, clutching his portfolio tightly. His mind raced as he pictured himself working here, making his parents proud. After what felt like an eternity, he was called into the interview room. To his surprise, Donald Trump himself was conducting interviews that day. Trump, then a highly visible real estate tycoon and reality TV personality, was known for his no-nonsense approach and larger-than-life personality. He was seated behind a massive desk, his signature red tie standing out against the crisp white of his shirt. Trump barely looked up as Alejandro entered, gesturing for him to sit. Alejandro introduced himself politely, his voice steady but hopeful. He outlined his achievements, graduating with honors, leading a student business club, and interning with a reputable company. But as he spoke, Trump's expression remained unreadable. Finally, Trump leaned back in his chair, his tone blunt. "Listen, kid," he said, "you've got a nice story, but let me be honest with you. We're looking for someone who understands American business, someone who knows how things work here. You're young, inexperienced, and frankly, your background doesn't exactly scream corporate material." The words hit Alejandro like a punch. He sat there, stunned, as Trump continued. "You should try somewhere smaller. Build your way up. This isn't the place for everyone." Alejandro forced a polite smile, thanking Trump for his time. But inside, his heart sank. As he walked out of the office, he felt small, as if all his hard work had just been dismissed in a matter of minutes. He knew he wasn't what Trump expected in a candidate, but he also knew one thing for certain. This wasn't the end of his journey. Weeks turned into months, and Alejandro kept pushing forward. He took a job at a small startup, working tirelessly and soaking up everything he could about the business world. He stayed late, asked questions, and even volunteered for projects outside his role. His co-workers noticed his drive, and before long, his efforts started paying off. Alejandro's ideas brought the company new clients, and his ability to solve problems earned him the respect of his team. But Alejandro wasn't satisfied. He wanted to do more, to lead, to create something of his own. He spent his nights researching the industry, sketching out business plans, and reaching out to mentors. His parents, though worried about his sleepless nights, supported him. They reminded him of the sacrifices they'd made to give him this chance, and Alejandro wasn't about to let them down. 2 years later, Alejandro took the biggest risk of his life. With every dollar he had saved and a small loan from a supportive mentor, he started his own company. It was a small operation at first, just Alejandro and 2 employees working out of a shared office space. But his vision was clear: to create a consulting firm that helped businesses innovate and adapt to the fast-changing market. The early days were brutal. Alejandro faced rejection after rejection, often wondering if he'd made the right decision. But each time, he got back up, learning from every setback. Slowly, his company gained traction. Clients were drawn to Alejandro's fresh perspective and his ability to deliver results. By the time Alejandro turned 28, his company had grown beyond anything he had imagined. With a team of 200 employees and an impressive client list, he had become a rising star in the industry. He was no longer chasing opportunities, or chasing him. One day, Alejandro received an invitation that made him stop in his tracks. It was from Trump Enterprises. They wanted his company to present a plan to restructure one of their underperforming divisions. Alejandro couldn't help but smile. He arrived at the same glass building that had once felt so intimidating, but this time, he wasn't the nervous young man seeking approval. He was the CEO of a thriving business, walking into the room with confidence. Alejandro stepped into the same office where his journey in the corporate world had begun years ago. The surroundings were just as grand, but this time, he felt different. He wasn't here to ask for an opportunity. He was here to offer solutions. The conference room was filled with senior executives, all eagerly awaiting Alejandro's presentation. At the head of the table sat Donald Trump, now visibly older, but still commanding the room with his presence. Trump glanced up as Alejandro entered, but it was clear he didn't recognize him. To Trump, this was just another business meeting. Alejandro exchanged handshakes with the team and introduced himself, keeping his composure professional but firm. He began his presentation, walking them through his proposal to revitalize their struggling division. His ideas were clear, innovative, and backed by real data. As he spoke, the room grew quiet, and even Trump leaned forward. His interest clearly piqued. Halfway through, Trump raised a hand, signaling for Alejandro to pause. "This is impressive," Trump said, his tone thoughtful. "You've got a sharp mind. How did you come up with these strategies?" Alejandro smiled slightly. "It's all about understanding the market and being willing to take risks. I've spent the past few years building a team that thrives on adaptability and creativity. We've been in the trenches, solving problems for businesses that felt stuck. It's something I'm passionate about." Trump nodded, clearly intrigued. "Well, passion and results speak for themselves. I'd like to hear more about your background. Where'd you start? Which firm did you cut your teeth on?" Alejandro's gaze held steady. "Funny enough, this isn't the first time I've been in this building." Trump raised an eyebrow, curiosity flickering in his eyes. "Oh?" Alejandro paused, letting the moment settle. "Years ago, I applied for a job here. I had just graduated, full of ambition, ready to make my mark. I sat in this very office for an interview, eager to join Trump Enterprises." Trump tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. Alejandro continued, "But during that interview, I was told I wasn't the right fit, that I didn't understand American business, and that I should try somewhere smaller." He let the words hang in the air for a moment. "So, I did." The room was silent. Alejandro could see the realization dawning on Trump's face. For a brief moment, the confident tycoon seemed caught off guard, but Alejandro didn't let the tension linger. He shifted the focus back to his presentation, outlining the final pieces of his proposal. By the end of the meeting, the room erupted in applause. The executives were impressed, and even Trump stood to shake Alejandro's hand. "You've got talent," Trump admitted. "I like people who can prove me wrong. You've come a long way, and I respect that." Alejandro accepted the compliment graciously, but inside, he felt a sense of quiet vindication. He had worked hard, not to prove anyone wrong, but to fulfill his own potential. This moment wasn't about revenge or validation. It was about growth and persistence. A few weeks later, Alejandro's company was officially brought on to lead the restructuring project. The deal was one of the biggest in his career, solidifying his reputation as a force to be reckoned with in the business world. As he stood in his corner office one evening, overlooking the city skyline, Alejandro reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He thought about the rejection that had once shaken him, the long nights of doubt, and the unwavering support of his parents. He realized that every setback had shaped him into the leader he had become. Meanwhile, back at Trump Enterprises, Donald Trump often referenced Alejandro's story in meetings, using it as an example of resilience and determination. While Trump had been the one to initially shut the door, he now respected the man who had built his own path and returned through it with confidence. Alejandro's story became an inspiration for many, a reminder that rejection isn't the end, but often the beginning of something greater. It was proof that with enough grit and determination, even the biggest obstacles can become stepping stones to success. And for Alejandro, the lesson was clear. The only limits are the ones you let define you.